was in a session the other day, and what came up is something that comes up a lot, where a male client experiences real difficulty talking to, in this case, his best friend, his closest friend,
right,
about what's really going on with him.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, feels isolated, cut off, like, he just, like, he doesn't really have anywhere to go with this rough stuff that he's going through. And it just got me thinking how men, I don't want to say all men, but a lot of men in our society don't talk.
Yeah, there's kind of this idea, I think we've seen this in clinical work, and then just across the board, that men don't typically share feelings.
That's it.
We're not.
That's it. It's not that they don't talk. It's that they don't talk about feeling.
Right.
Right.
There's a depth or a level that maybe it doesn't get to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that might be a good thing to talk about today, and kind of go through this idea of, like, what keeps men from sharing with any depth about what's going on with others in their life.
Yeah.
And that could be with a therapist, that could be with a significant other,
Mm-hmm.
it could be with, in this case that you reference, a best friend.
Yeah. Even with close friends. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is a sense that the vulnerability it takes to talk about feelings is weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a kid being praised when I reached maybe the age of 5, and 4 or 5, when I would fall and I didn't cry. Like, I fell, I skimmed my knee, and I didn't cry because I didn't want to seem like a little baby.
Right.
And I remember being praised by my father in that moment. Oh, good boy, big boy. What a big boy you are.
Yeah, kind of like this toughness, right?
Right.
If you showed how tough you were,
Mm-hmm.
then that was rewarded by praise.
Exactly. And I think it just kind of snowballed from there.
Of course.
Where we are, again, encouraged to, what is it, like, man up.
Yeah.
Walk it off.
Be tough. Yeah, walk it off is always that, like,
Walk it off.
Yeah, shake it off is always what
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I catch myself doing this, I think it's encouraged in sports a lot.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
And then my kid plays hockey. It's like I catch myself kind of saying, like, hey, dude, come on, like, just shake it off. You got to get up, keep going. But then I see the kind of the whole idea there, and what the coaches push and the other players push. There's this idea that you have to be the toughest out there,
right,
and you can't be hurt. You can't, and I think everybody sees it. We watch hockey games, and people, these are guys known for, like, getting cuts and sticking their finger, like, in the wound to skate off the ice, and getting stitched up on the bench to go back out. So there's such a
it's crazy.
Yeah,
that's like Game of Thrones.
It is really some of the stuff when you start reading, like, the injury lists that people play through playoffs with, like broken ribs and bones and everything else, and torn ligaments, and they just get out there and you can't show any weakness because then it's exploited. But I want to go back to this idea of, like, this starts at a young age.
Really young. I think statistically speaking, it can be cited, you present as early as, like, 2, 3,
Mm-hmm.
where there's, like, a male kid feeling a certain pressure to be tough.
Right.
And it's, like the emotional isolation that it can lead to is, it's common.
I think that
is right.
Yeah, I think that's how we see it really kind of play out is people feel really alone.
Mm-hmm.
People end up feeling really disconnected and alone and isolated from others. And we've talked before about this, and I think specifically when we talked about the importance of connection and community.
Right.
When we don't have a space to feel like we're part of something,
mm-hmm.
it turns to depression. It turns to anxiety.
Oh yeah, and maladaptive behaviors. Yeah. This drinking too much.
Sure. Anger,
any kind of activity that's, like, sort of stuffing the feelings essentially.
Right. I think what we see is that men have we're allowed two different settings. We're allowed quiet and kind of until we build up too much, and then we're allowed anger.
Yeah.
And those are the two settings that I think that in society we kind of see,
right,
and culturally we see, but then there's pushback on that, like, oh, why are you acting out so angrily? Why are you getting so pissed off in this moment? But those are the two settings I know.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
that I'm familiar with. Like, I can either keep it all inside until suddenly there's a burst, right? Because it becomes too much to manage.
Right.
Because we're not sharing about how something feels with the wide vocabulary of feelings we have.
Right.
And we're not sharing with any depth to anybody that might matter in our lives.
Totally.
Even if it's just a share, just to get it off our chest.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important thing to look at here is like if we have a close friend or somebody to share with, it's not that we're looking for somebody to solve the problem. Sometimes we just want to like blow off the steam and say, dude, can you believe what I'm going through right now? Can you believe this shit? Like this is really hard. This is painful. This is exhausting. This is, worrisome for me.
And I love that you just said that, because so many men, myself included, are conditioned, I believe, to solve problems.
Yeah.
Like everything is supposed to be pragmatic. So communication is supposed to be pragmatic. If somebody's venting to me, then they must want me to come up with a solution. And I'll put pressure on myself, as many men, I think, do in our society, to come up with the answer, come up with the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we don't want that.
I believe there's a term for that that's been used widely. I think I think it's related to mansplaining some things.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, totally.
It is. And there's like a level of condescension with mansplaining. That's like, especially like a man explaining something to a woman. It's like almost like talking down, like you need this. But what are the 3 H's that we talk about sometimes? Like if somebody wants to communicate something, we use it in recovery sometimes. Do you want to be heard?
Right.
Do you want to be helped? Or do you want to be hugged? Those are 3. They're
heard, helped, and hugged.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of when we had our first kid. This guy I was working for, he's a really wonderful, really thoughtful, warm person. He said, kids want 3 things. Babies want 3 things. If they're crying, they want to be changed, they want to be fed, or they're tired.
Yeah.
And so those are it reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Like there's the really core things. We just want to be helped, hugged,
or heard. And sometimes we really do just want to be heard more than anything. Like, and I think a lot of men can jump to the conclusion that, along the lines of mansplaining, oh, this person wants me to help them.
Right.
Oh, what you're expressing to me is a frustration. There must be a problem. I'm going to,
I need to fix it.
Calculate a solution. I want to fix it.
I'm going to fix it for you.
Mm-hmm. And to a degree, the measure of the kind of man I am depends on how well I can present solutions, how much I can fix.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's I think it's kind of attached to bringing meat back home to the cave.
Oh, totally.
To kind of like, that's how I look at it. It's like kind of like, can I feel like I have a purpose or like I mean something?
Right.
And how do we define that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways to define our purpose. And we know this as we've talked, as we kind of move through life now, we could look at all these different ways to define our purpose and our meaning.
Right.
But sometimes that lizard brain takes over and it's pretty primal. Like
a lot of times,
if I'm not bringing you, a fresh saber-toothed tiger to the cave, then I'm really not worth it.
Then I have no purpose. So I have no value.
I have to solve the issues of hunger in the family. I have to solve the shelter.
Yeah.
And it builds from there.
Yeah.
Which is now that is not gender exclusive.
No.
Right. So that doesn't, these roles have shifted over time. But I think there seems to be this phenomenon where men are still not sharing. Right. And opening up and kind of, and that role has not shifted.
I think that could be informed though by that sort of lizard brain mentality because one reason that men are not sharing is, like they don't want to be a burden. They don't want to look weak. No one wants to hear this. I should be able to figure this out myself, especially if there are problems. But there, at the same time, there are significant stressors that we're seeing men, experience in the therapeutic setting. Mm-hmm. I'm experiencing it in my own life as a man.
Absolutely.
We share about it.
Yeah.
There's definitely a message that I have playing internally that says, figure it out. You don't show weakness, figure it out. Don't show weakness, figure it out. I know you're stressed out right now. Tamp it down, mm-hmm. Keep calm and carry on.
That's right. Shake it off.
Yeah. Shake it off.
Keep going. It's interesting as you're talking about this. I had this. I was remembering your comments around perfectionism, mm-hmm. and this idea of what we have to show the world versus what's really going on inside.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a male exclusive issue. I think that's a person issue.
Yeah.
But it seems to be pretty like a pretty intense kind of like feeling, like this idea of like I can't show the world, right? That's my ideal. I can't show the world what's going on with me.
Fear of judgment.
There's fear of judgment.
There's a sense that at every turn mm-hmm. we're going to be judged. I think like as a therapist, it's a joy and a privilege and an honor really to provide somebody, at least theoretically, with a safe space where they're not going to be judged.
Yeah.
We talked about last week the difference between judgment and assessment. We were speaking with Andrew. Some people do go into the therapeutic setting thinking they are here to be judged, but to just listen, I don't know, it's still tough for me sometimes, even as a therapist, to trust that I can just be heard without being judged, and I don't have to put on a brave face for any given situation.
Yeah, that is a challenge, I think, to be aware of it. So one of the things we do is we kind of, once we're aware of the phenomenon and what's mm-hmm. going on, then it's okay, what do we do with it? And it's just bringing awareness, saying to yourself, okay, I know that this is a struggle for me, and as a male, what am I typically hiding from and running from or just avoiding? Mm-hmm. Vulnerability, judgment, weakness, what we perceive as weakness.
Right.
Feelings historically have been equated to weakness.
Yeah.
And that's not true. We just know it's actually the opposite. Like if we can express our feelings in an open way, that's actually a really strong and courageous thing to do.
Right.
So, but if we're aware of the weakness, these ideas, then we have to push into it. And that's where I think the hesitation comes from, is the idea of like pushing into vulnerability, pushing into that idea of like being weak.
Right.
That we're going to do everything we can to avoid that.
I remember I went to boarding school in the early 90s, like 1990 to 1994. I was in boarding school, and it was in the boys' dormitories. It was like Lord of the Flies. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was really, really rough.
Yeah.
And there was only so much supervision because it's a bunch of boys, essentially living without their, they're not at home.
Right.
And there are dorm heads, faculty who live in the dormitories, but they're not around for everything.
No.
And even the prefects who are the senior in this school, there were senior boys who would sort of run the dorm, and they were supposed to bring law and order to the proceedings. Often it was like chaos and anarchy. But it really didn't feel safe to have feelings other than rage, maybe.
Right.
And it was so interesting because I remember I got to that school, I was 14, and 14-year-old boys are young. They're very young developmentally. Yeah. And there were so many of us who were, I think, homesick and probably crying alone in their rooms after lights out. And yet to show that would be really dangerous.
Oh my God, can you imagine showing a bunch of other 14-year-old boys in a dorm that you're
crying,
you're missing home? That you're missing your mom and dad?
Yeah.
That you're missing like the safety of your bedroom?
Right. No way.
No way.
And so this lie begins. Mm-hmm. And it really does feel like a lie. Like male identity. I'm fine. I can handle this. I'm not going to be weak. I'm not going to be a burden. And also, I think that lie is told out of fear of reprisal. There's this sense that like, oh, wow, I could get hurt. I'm going to show you mentioned the hockey players.
Yeah.
I'm going to show weakness. They're all going to come in for the kill.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. It's, it becomes really animal at that point. Just thinking of that's like the first, probably not the first, but it's a really early example of when we start to live inauthentically.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked before about if our insides don't match our outsides, it starts to create a lot of issues.
Right.
That's where I think a lot of depression stems from. A lot of mental health issues stem from having an inauthentic self. Right?
Totally.
If our insides don't match our outsides
Mm-hmm.
with what we present, mostly, then
Right.
there's an incongruence. It's going to cause a lot of problems. It causes problems with us socially, relationally,
Right.
with our mental health, with our emotional health.
Totally.
And that's something I think we look at. There's many different areas that we look to for kind of where mental health issues stem from. And we have a whole, I think in the United States, we look at a whole genetic medical model of
Right.
it. But I do believe that a majority of these issues actually, they're not stemming from this genetic predisposition for depression, anxiety, and like these chemical
Right.
imbalances. They're coming from this lack of congruence with our insides and our outsides.
And also the way we're being conditioned, the person in society.
100%,
Idea, like as
yeah.
social workers, we come from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's the training.
The person and environment,
Right.
Our environment impacts how we kind of develop and how we go through the world.
And when there is a lack of equity for a lot of us, for a lot of humans, then those incongruencies are going to naturally develop.
Right.
When we don't feel like we have, again, going back in a way to the boys' dormitory, if we don't feel like we have the freedom to express our emotions, to express ourselves fully, then we're going to shut down because that's what feels safe. And then we're going through life. Eventually we get to a place where, I'm 50 years old. I'm not 14 years old anymore.
Right.
I can afford to show some vulnerability.
You could, but how many 50-year-olds do you know that have the emotional availability of a 14-year-old? I mean, we hear this all the time.
many.
Oh, they're so immature. Like
Yeah.
the ability to kind of function as an emotionally like stable adult I feel like it's kind of rare at this point.
It is really rare.
We hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
That guy acts like a child, or he's reacting like a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but if we really start to look at it, that's not wrong. It is this kind of like
There's a reason for it.
There's a reason though. Now let's go back even further. So so we know in development that we hit a certain part in like our late single digits as a child and into our teens.
Mm-hmm.
We make the shift from the family system to our social system
Right.
to get feedback from. So we're getting that feedback from our peers,
Right.
and no longer we're detaching from the
mom and
family
dad.
then, right? So we're already going through that developmental phase of trying to detach from the family system so that we can go out in the world later on. So we start to look at our peers for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's what you're referencing in that being 14 at a school dorm, or being on a hockey team or a soccer team or whatever it might be.
Right.
And then if we go back even further, though, we start to look at the family system. And you referenced it earlier, like getting this praise from your dad. Oh, you didn't cry when you skinned your knee.
Mm-hmm.
You muscled through it, or,
Right.
and I can think I was so banged up as a kid, right? Like all the scrapes and falls and bikes and no helmets and all this stuff that went through, and just, and having the same feelings, like, I'm not going to cry through this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to push through. I remember cutting my knee wide open in a bike accident.
Yeah.
Cutting my elbow wide open in another bike accident, and just being like, no, I can't cry through this. Even getting all the peroxide poured on my leg.
Oof.
Like, no, I'm just going to go through it. And
How old were you? Around
12.
Oof.
One of them was 12. The other one was like 8.
Yeah.
So it's in both of them, even at 8 years old, I remember like, no, don't cry. In that instance, we had an awful neighbor when I was growing up, and
I think everyone has an awful.
everybody had that awful, but we had that real curmudgeon kind of like awful.
Yep.
And I remember wiping out in front of his driveway on my bike and just wearing like wet jeans because I was an 8-year-old in the 80s, and that's what we did. And I was probably swimming somewhere, and he came out and laughed because I crashed my bike. And I remember like, I can't cry right now because if I cry, he's gonna think I'm
This cruel man is going to probably go in for the kill.
Who was awful anyway. And he was probably, who knows what his issue was. But you know, when I think about that, even just reflecting on it now, I was like, oh yeah, even then I knew not to cry in front of this guy.
Yeah.
Because it was going to show that I was weak. I was 8, maybe 7 even. And
Seriously.
just, and like cut open, probably needed stitches at some point,
Oof.
but you know, it was a certain time. So we didn't, brush it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, we get conditioned at such a young age to not show weakness, to
Right.
not share certain feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know the vocabulary at that point.
Well, the dangerous thing about it is we don't know the vocabulary. And then if we start with this maladaptive, incongruence where we start as men, we start stuffing our feelings as boys, we get to middle age or older, and that's where our emotional development stopped.
Yeah.
So you're looking at this, to quote Sabrina Carpenter, a man-child, right? We are running around with really severely stunted emotional development.
Yeah.
And as you said, a lack of vocabulary. How do I even express what I'm feeling? I know I have these feelings. Again, male clients who come to us at that point in their lives, maybe they're in their early 50s and the shit is finally hitting the fan, but they don't know how to express it.
Right.
Maybe their partners are saying, as you suggested, that he acts like a child. He can't express himself.
Yeah, or he doesn't say anything, and then all of a sudden he just snaps and blows up.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this anger come from?
Right.
Why is he so angry?
Mm-hmm.
And we know, if we go back, and we know how much I love to talk about anger.
Yeah.
Pain and fear. Pain and fear.
Totally.
I always say it twice. Pain and fear. 3 times.
Pain and fear. And then you have this, as you say, this, societally condoned, outpouring of rage, which is driven by pain and fear. But it doesn't work after a while. We need another modality.
Yeah. So we see that now, I think, in society even more so. I think we were actually trending away from it for a bit.
Yeah.
And now we're back to being outraged.
Yeah.
We're so angry about everything.
Yeah. Everyone's mad as hell.
That's it.
I'm not going to take it anymore.
Right.
Network.
Yeah. So picking up the pitchforks and torches.
Right.
But it's interesting. Nobody is doing. I don't see people doing the work to learn the vocabulary yet.
Yeah.
What is it? And so that's what we want to look at is if anybody identifies with this, like this, I know I feel something. I know where I feel it. I know it doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
I know it feels uncomfortable in my chest. It feels uncomfortable in my stomach. Oh, I feel it in my fists. When I get so angry, I just want to like clench my fists.
Mm-hmm.
Or I feel this buzzing in my head.
Right.
I remember my daughter when she was younger. It was like the first time we ever saw her get mad. It was like 4 or 5 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And she got so angry at us and stormed up the stairs in the cutest way possible. But I remember we asked her, it's like, hey, what were you feeling right there? You got so angry, you ran up the stairs and you stomped away. She's like, it felt like seltzer in my head. I was like, oh, what a great explanation.
That's genius.
And then I was like, man, how many times do I feel like I have seltzer in my head?
Right.
All the time, or in my chest, or in my gut. And I think we all feel it in different spots. Now that was her, she didn't have the vocabulary for it,
right?
Like for what the feeling was, but she knew enough about seltzer when it like bubbled in her mouth,
right?
At 4 years old, and she knew how to explain it, which was really cool. I learned a lot at that moment. I was like, oh, I can explain these things like in different ways.
But having the vocabulary is amazing.
Yeah. So I think part of the process, Kenyon, is the like when we're going through therapy, or even if not, even if we're just reflecting in life, like we're not involved in a therapy process, how are we learning to and to put names to the feelings.
To the feelings.
And how many are there's hundreds.
There's
right?
literally hundreds of feelings. How are we going to educate ourselves? How are people going to get educated? I think modeling is the greatest way for, I think, men to change in this way. There need to be more models.
Mm-hmm.